proud to be here tonight with the Iranian American Women's Foundation, who supports so many young girls and women and mentors them and allows them to achieve their dreams, and also recognizes the success of so many Iranian American women in the past who have broken the barriers and allowed us to be here today.
I still wake up every morning and it feels like a pinch me moment to think that I'm actually an astronaut right now. I am Jasmin Moghbeli. It's a deep question. Who am I? Well, I'm a wife now. I am a daughter, my parents' favorite child, probably. I'm a Marine, and I'm an astronaut.
What an honor. Thank you for being here. Who are you? That's our first question. So we see these pictures of you in the astronaut outfit. As a little girl, you always knew you wanted to be an astronaut. What was it that set you apart, though? Because every little kid wants to be an astronaut. What was the drive that propelled you to actually accomplish that?
First off, I also want to say thank you. It's an honor to be here. And what a great organization to recognize incredible women. There are many women not recognized there, but just thank you for recognizing the incredible work by so many women. So what set me apart? Honestly, I don't think much. Like, I was a very quirky kid, like a lot of other kids. I think when I would say, oh, I want to be an astronaut, people were probably like, okay, sure. You know, a lot of kids say that, but I really believed I was going to become an astronaut. I think maybe that was a difference. And I think probably the most important thing that has gotten me here is a lot of support from people and resilience through failure. I think I've failed at every major step on the way here. My first exam in college, I got a 24 out of 100, and that was in math, a subject I thought I was good in. And so just, I think knowing where I wanted to go and knowing what I wanted to do and just continuing to try and get help from others. And I've just had so many great mentors and support over the years, and my family believed in me, which made me believe in myself.
I also consistently got 24s in math, which is why I didn't go into the STEM fields. Your family, your parents were immigrants, obviously from Iran. How did that play a role in your upbringing and in kind of your motivations?
I think having that close connection, you know, my brother and I were born in Germany. We all came here when I was just 8 months old. But hearing the stories of, you know, my mom would tell me, I mean, they had an amazing life back in Iran, and then that kind of changed in the blink of an eye, and recognizing how, I think it just gave me an appreciation for what this country has afforded me and the opportunities it's afforded me. And I think that played a role in me wanting to give service back to the country and joining the military. But I think it just really made me appreciate how great this country is. There's a lot of things we can improve upon, but where else do you see so many people from different walks of life being so successful?
And you talked about your mentors. I read somewhere that you met Sunny Williams, and that played a big role.
Yeah, actually, so I went to watch a shuttle launch, STS-116, when I was waiting to start flight school. And I was at a bit of a crossroads because I had joined the military thinking I wanted to fly jets, but as I learned more about the different missions and the aircraft, I realized I really wanted to fly helicopters. But I thought you had to be a jet pilot to become an astronaut. And when I went to that launch, Sunny Williams was one of the astronauts on board. Amazing inspiration, I think, to a lot of women. She was a Navy helicopter pilot, and so I realized I could be a helicopter pilot, and that's what made me go 100% for the aircraft I wanted. And I don't think I'd be here today if I, flew jets. I didn't have the same passion about them.
Did she say something to you in particular that you remember and that stuck with you?
So it's funny, I didn't meet her in person on that trip. I watched her launch, read her bio. Years later is when I met her in person, still aspiring to become an astronaut. And I met her, and she was working on commercial crew at the time. And, it was a long road, a lot of challenges. And what was so great about that moment is she's told me that on that day, she was having a bit of a rough day, and she met me, and I think I reminded her a bit of herself, and it was just a reminder of, I think, a bit of like where she had come, and remembering she was an inspiration to the next generation.
That's a really good point, because everyone needs a mentor to really get to that point, and I know you take that role seriously. I mean, you're here, and it's not just as an Iranian American, but also as a woman, breaking all kinds of barriers in your field. So why is it important for you, or how important, I guess, is it for you to mentor young girls and to provide an example and to provide representation?
Yeah, I'll be honest. I don't think when I first got selected for this role, I don't think I had a full appreciation for how important it was. And part of that was because I was in many male-dominated fields before I joined the astronaut corps, but I always tried at the time not to think about that fact, not to think about the fact that I was different because I was a woman. I was the only, woman Cobra pilot on every single one of my deployments. And maybe that was just how I got through it at the time. But when I got selected, actually, and we were preparing for our announcement, we all put on these blue flight suits. And my classmate, Raja's daughter, who was, I think, about 3 at the time, saw there were 6 women in our class, and she saw us and went, wow, mommies can be astronauts too? And it clicked for me, and I was like, oh, it's so important for young people to see someone they can connect to in any way, whatever that connection is. Like when I was a kid, Mike Massimino got selected from near my hometown, and the fact that he was from Long Island meant I could be an astronaut too. So just whatever it is that kids can connect to and see themselves in someone is part of, I think, what helps build that belief. And I'm a real strong believer, if you really believe you can do something, I think the mind is so powerful, and that you can achieve something if you really believe it.
And speaking of kids, you have 2 daughters. Did you ever think it would be impossible to balance a career like this, or maybe even half of your career, with being a mother and being a wife?
Yeah, honestly, I had kind of decided I just wasn't going to have a family. I wanted to focus on my career, and you're right, I didn't think it was possible. And the reason it is possible is because I have an amazing, supportive husband. And I think you'll see that behind anyone who balances a family and a career successfully, whether that's a man or a woman, there's someone supporting them, whether that's their spouse or their family. We also have an entire village behind us. Both our parents moved nearby when we had the girls, and we have an amazing friend network. So really, I don't think it would be possible without those people in my life. And so choose wisely when you choose your life partner.
And you said that it's wise to choose a life partner who's kind to other people, or watch how they treat other people, right?
Yes, I forgot.
Such a good piece of advice.
But you're right, I did. I remember one of the things early on that I noticed in my husband was how he treated other people, to include, his family, his other friends, and just anyone. And, because if someone's trying to woo you, they're going to treat you nicely, but how do they treat other people? That's probably how they're going to treat you in the future. So yeah, that's true.
Great advice. Would you want your daughters to participate in such risky careers?
If my daughters wanted to do this, I would be 100% supportive. And, I tell people, I think a lot of people think of astronauts as risk takers, and people will look at me and say, well, you're a Marine, a test pilot, an astronaut, you must love doing risky things. But I'm actually not a risk taker at all. I think I take very calculated risks. I only take risks if I think the benefit is worth it, if I think we've mitigated that risk to the max extent we can. So I'm not, I don't think a very just blind risk taker like some people think.
Not reckless.
Right, not reckless. But I really believe in what we're doing, and so if my daughters wanted to be a part of that, I would absolutely support them.
Do they comprehend where you are when you're gone?
They understand so much more than I thought they will. They were 2 when I launched and 3 when I got back, and they understand. They know so much about the space station, and they can tell you all about the planets. And so, yeah, I think they really do understand a lot more than you would think a 2 or 3-year-old would understand.
That's amazing. So you were a combat pilot. Tell us about that a little bit. I mean, that seems pretty risky.
Yeah, so I wanted to join the military from a pretty young age. My grandfather in Iran, my aunt's here, her father and my mom's father served in the Iranian Navy. He was, I believe, a 4-star admiral there. And I remember when I was in kindergarten, he visited from Iran and told me stories about his time in the Navy. So from a pretty young age, I was interested in the military for a variety of reasons. And it was my freshman year in college. I'd actually just gotten to college when September 11th happened. And I think for me, felt called to serve this nation that had given me so much.
I know the answer, I think, but have you experienced sexism and racism and discrimination throughout your career? I know it's not something you dwell on or focus on, but it was an obstacle you had to overcome?
Yeah, I think I was naive to it at first. I honestly didn't expect to be on the receiving end of that, but definitely there are people that think women should be doing certain things and speak and act according to that belief. But I will say there were also always so many people who didn't feel that way and supported what I was doing. So I think having those other allies was really helpful throughout my career, and also in making me believe, I'm not crazy, or I'm not wrong for doing this.
Right. And what is your advice to other women or to other Iranian Americans who are maybe more sensitive to that type of discrimination?
I think something it took me a long time to realize, because we say often, there's strength in diversity, but what does that mean and why? And what I've realized over time is, I experience the world as an Iranian American woman. I can't ever experience the world as a man or as a Black person. And because of those experiences, because we do have different experiences, we see the world differently, I think. We're shaped by our experiences, our minds are shaped by our experiences, and I think that allows us to see problems from a different perspective and have different viewpoints. And so I think where that strength and diversity comes in, when you look at a problem, if you have 50 minds looking at a problem, but they all think the same way, that doesn't buy you anything. It might even be worse than just having one person, because you're just feeding off each other. But if you have 50 people that have a different viewpoint and tackle the problem from a different angle, that's where the value comes in. And so I think what I would say to the woman out there, or anyone who feels like they're in the minority in some way, is I want you to have the true belief that your viewpoint is important and valuable, and to have the courage to speak up. It took me, I think, years to recognize that, and so often I sat quiet in a room when I think I could have added value. And so I just say I hope you're a little quicker than I was in recognizing the value you bring to the table.
And you, of course, are paving the way for other women. I mean, how does it feel to see yourself with all those other women who are, on the screen and during the opening?
I mean, it's a little weird, but I'm absolutely honored to be amongst that group, and I think just really honored.
Okay, I want to shift gears a little bit and talk about this recent ISS incident and just get your reaction, how you felt when you saw this unfold.
Are you referring to the Starliner
Yes.
flight? Yeah, so it's interesting from my perspective as a test pilot and as an astronaut. And so just, I think to fill everyone in if you're not familiar, so we flew the first crew ever to fly on the Boeing Starliner spacecraft. So now we have 3 different vehicles that can take crew to and from the space station. The SpaceX Crew Dragon, which is what I flew up on, the Russian Soyuz, which can take 3 crew at a time, and now we had Sunny and Butch fly up on the Starliner for the first time ever. And they've been up there a little longer than originally planned. There were some leading up to the launch, there were a couple of issues with a leak and the valves, and then on the way there, additional problems. But they were able to recover, I think, 4 or 5 of the thrusters that were having issues. But really, from my perspective, this is why we do test, and this is a test flight. Test pilots like me advocate for that. You can do analysis all day, but you're not going to, it's only as good as what you think of in advance and what you model in advance. So that's why test flights like these are so important. And I think we're learning a lot from this flight, and they, part of that spacecraft before it comes back down to Earth will separate and be burnt up in the atmosphere. So we're trying to learn as much as we can while it's still up there and attached, and we can get the data, the telemetry back down to ground. So for me, when you're flying a new spacecraft, this kind of just comes with the territory.
It's all about perspective, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So I've interviewed other astronauts before, and all of them have talked about the moment they looked down on Earth and how their perspective completely changed. Did you experience that as well?
So I wouldn't say my perspective changed. I felt like it was just really reinforced. And I wish everyone in this room could see the Earth in the way that we see it. Because not just the first time I looked at it, every single time I looked at it, I was in awe. I don't even have the words. It's just spectacular. It's magnificent. And I tell people it's just alive. Every time I looked out the window, even if we were passing over the same place, it's changing based on the clouds or the lighting. And I saw the seasons change. I saw winter fall on the northern hemisphere, and within a week, suddenly everything was white. And you just realize there's nothing like it nearby. Maybe somewhere out there there is, but there's nothing like it near us. And it's such a gift. And so I think I already knew how precious our planet was before I launched, so that's why I say I don't think it changed my perspective, it just really reinforced it. And then the other thing I'll say is you just get this sense of human connectedness. You just see land masses. You don't see the dividing lines between countries. And you see, like, we're just this little planet in the grand scheme of things. And everyone I knew and loved, other than my crewmates, were on that planet. And so you just have this amazing feeling of awe.
Does it look like little ants go marching down below the whole human race and all of our issues and our conflicts and our problems and our lack of our ability to take care of our Earth? Does any of that strike you when you look down?
I have to say, I felt a great sense of hope up there. You know, there was a lot going on while I was on the space station, but being up there, I was up there with an international crew, working side by side, not just on the space station, but also the teams on the ground working side by side across the globe. And the International Space Station itself is incredible. It's a marvel of human engineering, and I didn't realize how impressed I would be by the space station itself. And that just gave me this sense of hope of, wow, like when we work together, we can do incredible things. And who would think you could have this orbiting laboratory in space? So that gave me a lot of hope, I think.
Oh, that's good. What is that like to be in that type of a confined space with 3 other people, like they said, from different backgrounds?
Yeah, it can go really well or it can go really poorly, right? For me, I loved it. I loved my crewmates, and it was, not just Satoshi, Andy, and Coach you see up there, but also Laurel, Alec, and Kolya, who flew up on the Soyuz. The 7 of us really spent the majority of those 6 months together. And it's just cool because you get to a point where, they could say something on space to ground, and no one on the ground would pick up on it, but you'd go, oh, you're a little frustrated, and you'd float around and just give them a smile to ease the tension, and you just get to that point where you're so comfortable with each other.
And they know all about Hafseen and Ghormeh Sabzi now and all kinds of things, right?
Yes, I shared Ghormeh Sabzi with them, talked about the background, talked about Nowruz. Unfortunately, I just missed Nowruz, so I came back down, didn't actually get to celebrate it up there, but they all loved the Ghormeh Sabzi, and Satoshi even said it was his favorite meal in space. So.
Wow, how did you get it there? Did you freeze it or something?
No, I was able to find it. The NASA Food Lab has to test any food we send up there, so it has to be a commercial product. You can't just, people asked, did my mom make it? That was not allowed. So I found a canned version of it and was able to send up a couple cans, and it was a little hard to heat it in the food warmer because the cans were just a little bit big, so I really had to squeeze them in there, but everyone loved it.
It was a hit, that's good. Everyone loves Ghormeh Sabzi.
Yeah.
And when we talk about being a teammate, right, you feel that it's better to go it with other people than to go it alone?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, there are just things there's no possible way you could achieve alone, and space travel is just one of them, but we have mission control centers around the world. We were conducting experiments from researchers around the world. Our trainers, the people who built our rockets and the spacecraft, and just, I don't know how many tens or hundreds of thousands of people to make our mission possible and the science and research that we did up there possible. And so it's absolutely necessary to have a team.
Yeah, and it's kind of like if your girls ever fight with each other, you can say, well, I was on a little tiny capsule for 6 months with people, and we had to learn to get along.
No, they're sweet angels. They would never fight.
What kinds of challenges did you experience when you were actually in space? Because I know you have to be the plumber and the hairdresser and the maintenance person and everything else because it's just you.
Yeah, that part of it I actually love, but what I think our biggest challenges came when, NASA makes it look easy sometimes, but keeping the International Space Station running is really challenging. And I saw the ground teams across the world tackling problems every single day. And that means you always have to be adaptable. And when we face the greatest challenges, I think, were when we had some expectation of how things were going to go. For example, a couple months into the mission, we were expecting to do a series of 2 spacewalks. And I think it was about 2 days prior to the first one. And there's a lot of preparation that goes into those spacewalks. And about 2 days prior, one of the Russian modules had a leak of its coolant, and the outside of space station might have been contaminated, so we had to delay the spacewalk. And then, a couple weeks later, we tried to do it again, and something else happened. So it's just when you have an expectation in your head of what you're going to do and that expectation's not met, I think those were the hardest times.
Did you ever have fear? And if so, how do you conquer it?
I'd say during the mission, the spacewalk I did with Laurel, it was both of our first spacewalks, that was the most, one of the scariest things I've done in my life. It was one of the most amazing things I've done in my life, but you just realize you're out there and you've put your own tether on this station, and if you didn't do that correctly, you're going to be the one paying for it. And back when we had shuttle could have maybe come and got you, but the space station can't come get you if you come off station. So I think that and just being out there and fully exposed was probably one of the scariest points in the mission for me. And working through that, I think my background really helped with that. My background as a Marine Corps Cobra pilot and test pilot, I just knew you have to keep your head in the game until you are both back in the airlock safely, and then you can kind of, let the emotions take over and let that sink in. But while you're out there, you just have to be there for you and your crewmate.
That sounds pretty terrifying. Also, being a Navy pilot sounds kind of terrifying. So how do you get there? Is that an acquired skill that you learn to work through the fear, that you learn to keep your composure and keep calm under pressure?
I think there's some of it that was natural for me, and definitely some that was learned over time. When I first started as a naval aviator, I would sometimes let something get in my head early in the flight, and was not as useful as a pilot the rest of the flight. And I just realized early on that you're still in an aircraft, you still need to get back home, you still need to be there for the other pilot in the aircraft and the other crew. So I did just learn, I think, to stay in the game mentally.
And how do you take what you learned in space and bring it back down to Earth and apply it in your everyday life?
It's even like just basic things. I realized over time, I had spent so long working towards this goal and was so focused on preparing for the mission when I was assigned that sometimes I didn't just stop and enjoy a moment. And something I really was proud of was in space. I think so many times I just was able to be present in the moment and recognize how amazing it was that I was up there with, I flew throughout those 199 days with 21 different crew members from 10 different nations, and the science and the medical research and the tech demos we were doing, just like to be present in that. And that was something I think I brought down with me from Earth, and also having like a sense of awe and wonder again. Now when I go for walks, I'm like looking at the trees and the plants and the birds and just all the different forms of life and amazing things. So I don't know if that was your question, but that was, I think, something I definitely brought down with me.
Describe the moment you took off and were going into space, and also the moment you came down and were landing back on Earth, and the emotions that you were going through.
Yeah, our launch, I don't know if you know this, but we actually didn't think we were going to launch on the launch day. So about T-minus 27 minutes, so 27 minutes prior to takeoff time, we got a call from SpaceX saying they had detected some leak. They were investigating it and would call us back in 10 minutes. About 10, 11 minutes later, they called and they didn't have much more info. And we had learned during our time in training, we needed to kind of let them work through that. And so we weren't asking too many questions. But normally, 10 minutes prior to launch, you exchange some words of congratulations on both ends, and that didn't happen. And so we thought we were not going. And at T-minus 1 minute, I think 45 seconds is when there's the final go call, and they said go. And we were just shocked, and we were like, go, do they really mean that? We're actually going today? And so we were kind of questioning, and then of course you get 10-9-8, we knew we were actually going. So it definitely caught us a bit off guard, because there was this technical issue they were solving. But then when you actually launch, I was expecting it to be rumbly and vibrating, but on the Falcon 9, the 9 engines in the first stage, it's so smooth. You feel the G's, you feel the acceleration right away. You know you've launched, but it's just like something's just pulled you up vertically, like a bungee almost. And then when the first stage cuts out, that was kind of my favorite moment, because you're weightless very briefly, and the second stage kicks in, and the second stage it's a single engine, so that's rumbly, and it's a very slow build in G's. And then 8.5 minutes later, you're in space and floating. So
that's incredible. Do you lose sense of time, both on the launch and in space?
I would say that you're in your suit and sitting in the spacecraft for a few hours before you launch, which I think at times went very quickly and at other times went very slowly. For me, the actual ascent, I'd say, went pretty quickly. I felt like all of a sudden we were in orbit and floating. And I think in general on the time and space station, the days went by slowly, but weeks passed by in a flash, and suddenly you were starting the next week.
What was a typical day like for you?
So the only thing that I'd say was typical about a day, because you do so many different things up there, was I'd wake up around 6 or 6:30. We operate off Greenwich Mean Time, and do my morning routine, and then at about 7:30 a.m., depending on the comm coverage, we'd have a morning planning conference, and then we'd work till about 7:30 p.m. when we had our evening planning conference. And the constant things were you had an hour for midday meal and 2.5 hours every single day for working out. And other than that, you could be working, you could be fixing the toilet, you could be doing an amazing life sciences experiment, you could be working on a technology demonstration, you could just be doing cargo ops, and we're scheduled down to 5-minute increments, so it's a pretty tight schedule.
So someone else schedules all of that for you?
Yes, the ground spends a lot of time working on our schedules and all the restrictions.
What about this, the advances in technology that allowed you to talk to Earth, that allowed people to see video of you, that allowed you to send these amazing images back to Earth? I mean, do you think that that is going to play a role in exciting more people and informing more people about what these missions actually entail?
Yeah, I would say I've done 3 deployments, and my communication back to Earth was much better from space than it was on those deployments. So the comm satellites we have are it's just impressive. You have almost continuous coverage down to Earth with these, gaps every hour or so, and that changes day to day. But the comm coverage is incredible. I was able to video chat with my husband and girls every week. Every Saturday, I would have a video chat with them. Then we have someone back on Earth, we can send pictures for them to post on social media and share, which I think is really important for people to connect with what we're doing up there and see what we're doing up there.
We could get a lot of young girls excited, young boys excited.
Yeah, absolutely.
What about when you landed? I forgot to follow up on that question. When you landed, what was that like? Was it like, this is the culmination of my entire life dream and now it's over? Or were you anxious to get back? Were you happy to be home? What were you feeling?
First off, landing was way more dynamic than the launch, because you're used to this weightless environment. For 6 months, you haven't had gravity, or you have gravity, but you're not feeling it, right? And so coming back down, I remember, so as the commander, I would call out the Gs, our altitude, time to splash down to the rest of the crew, and I remember looking up and seeing 0.2 Gs. So, we're sitting here right now at 1 G, so this was not even 1 G yet, and it felt like 2 Gs to me, and we were going to about 4.5 Gs, so everything just feels so heavy, and your neurovestibular system is totally off. So the drogue chutes came out, and then the main chutes come out, and it just felt like we were being tossed and tumbled around, and then we splashed down in the water, and I watched the video after the fact, and it is the calmest day. I mean, there are no waves, there's no wind, but to us in the capsule, it felt like we were rocking at least 45 degrees side to side, so you're just very off. When they handed me my sneakers, it felt like dumbbells. So everything is very weird. In terms of, it was very bittersweet for me coming back. I was really excited. My girls had changed so much. I mean, they turned 3 while I was up there, so I was really excited to get home, see them, my friends, family, my husband. But I had just left this amazing place and this amazing part of my life, and also I had spent this time with my crewmates, and right after, you're scattered in all different directions, especially because we had such an international crew. So it was definitely bittersweet coming back.
What's next for you? Do you have, like, when you have dreams, you've accomplished so many of your dreams. What's next? What do you dream of doing?
I hope to keep flying in space. I hope to have more space missions. I would would absolutely love to go back to the International Space Station. I would love to be part of the Artemis missions to the moon. Really, I genuinely believe in the value of human space exploration and just want to be a part of it in any way, even if that's supporting from the ground if I don't fly again.
Do you think there's life on, like on Mars or on other planets?
I would be really surprised if there's not life somewhere. It just doesn't seem conceivable to me that there's no other life out there anywhere.
I mean, it's kind of mind-blowing to think about. It's hard to even think about it, to even conceptualize what else is out there, right? And that was always the curiosity that drove you? Yeah,
absolutely. And yeah, it's hard to, like you said, it's hard to even grasp it because, you just look at, I could see the Milky Way really clearly from the space station. But that's just one of so many galaxies. And so it's just a bit mind-boggling how much is out there. And in the other space missions we have that are not human space exploration, like the James Webb Telescope, or even mounted on the space station, we have the alpha magnetic spectrometer and looking outward at dark matter. And so many cool things that we're exploring and learning more about our origins and our planet.
What do you want just the average man who sees maybe your social media or who sees your mission to know about the Earth and to consider when just making everyday decisions on Earth?
Earth is just such a gift. And I don't know if there's another planetary body like Earth out there, but it's just like, I don't know, I don't even know how to express it. To me, it's just so incredible what we have here, and I just want people to really value that and take care of it. And what a shame, I mean, shame doesn't even cover it, but what a shame it would be if we didn't take care of this incredible gift we've been given.
Do you think people realize how fragile it is?
I hope so. I don't know. I think some people do, maybe some people don't. I'm not sure.
What would you tell your daughters if they said maybe, we want to achieve something great, but we don't know what it is yet, or we're intimidated by it, or we don't think we can do it, that self-doubt that people have?
Yeah, I think that's totally natural to have self-doubt. I've had plenty of self-doubt, and I think something that's really important, we talked a bit about failure earlier, but something that's really important to realize is in those moments when you fail, and if it's at something you really wanted to achieve, it's terrifying because you don't know the end of the story. Like, I didn't know I was going to end up here when I failed that math exam at MIT, or when I almost didn't solo in flight school. And so there are so many moments where I think, just acknowledging that it's normal for them to feel that self-doubt and to feel scared to fail, but just recognizing that you just if it's important to you, just don't stop. Don't stop at the failure, like keep going. And that sounds simple to say in hindsight, but it's really hard sometimes to do in the moment. And if you're trying to achieve something great, you will fail, and that's totally normal.
That's great advice. What about other challenges in your life, not career-wise, if you're comfortable sharing any, and how you respond to those too? Because there's the choices that you elect to make that maybe you're scared of, right? Like the challenges that you're scared you might fail at. But what about the things that are thrown at you, like deaths in the family, or the loss of a job or a war, things that you can't control that are thrown at you? What advice do you have for people taking on those types of challenges, and if you feel comfortable sharing any of your own?
Yeah, I think one thing that's really important to recognize, and I think you hinted at it a bit there, is knowing what you can control and what you can't control. Because a lot of people, myself included, have wasted a lot of time and effort or just mental energy on things that they can't control. And so I think recognizing that is a really important first step. And then I'm a big people person. Like, I really believe in support from people makes all the difference. I'm a strong believer in it takes a village, and I think that's true when those problems are thrown at you. I tell people, you don't get to choose your family, but you do get to choose your friends, and choose wisely. Choose people that will be there when you need them, who will challenge you, but also uplift you and support you. And I think that's made all the difference in my life when I face those challenges. Being in the Marine Corps, I've lost some good friends to aviation accidents and mishaps. And what's helped pull me through those are my friends, and even I think also acknowledging, oftentimes when something bad happens, there is good that comes from it. One of my really good friends from my second deployment, when she unfortunately passed away, we now are so close with the rest of her family, and her mother was at my launch, and so I gained something, even though I lost someone really close to me, I gained something else.
That's really beautiful. What advice do you have to girls who may be watching this on YouTube or something, not only about the perseverance aspect of it, but also just on the practical level? What should they be doing? What steps should they be taking now?
If they're interested in being an astronaut, or just generally?
Maybe going into the military, maybe being a pilot, maybe being an astronaut. All of those are huge, huge goals and accomplishments.
Yeah, I think, I guess a couple things. For example, a lot of times people ask, okay, what are the steps to become an astronaut? And I mentioned earlier, if you look at just my class, we have people from, we have doctors, we have submariners, we have engineers, marine biologists, all sorts of different backgrounds. I think it's really important to try to find what you're really passionate about and what you really care about, because that will then drive you to do the hard work it takes to be in these fields. It's not going to be easy. There's just, that's just not how it works. And so it has to be, I think, something you care about, so that you have that drive and dedication to push through all the times that are challenging. And then I think the other thing I'll say is, as we mentioned before about diversity of thought, I think that leads into we need you, especially we need more women in these fields, and we need more women leaders in these fields. And so not only do you belong, but we need you.